Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another season of Two Bi Guys. I'm Rob. I cannot believe this season is here already. I can't believe it's time. I hope you've all been having an amazing summer filled with lots of pride. I just got back from Amsterdam Pride. I was there because actually a listener of this podcast, Leroy, invited me. He and Vera, his partner, were organizing and designing the first ever Bi Plus Netherlands boat on the Canal Parade for Pride. Bi Plus Netherlands is an awesome organization over there. They're a community group. They run social functions and other online things like the Bi World Meetup, which I believe is every couple months, maybe 4 times a year, maybe 2 times a year. But check out the next Bi Plus World Meetup. I will be there. It's run by Bi Plus Netherlands. I had such an amazing time over there, meeting everyone in that group, being on the boat, helping them put it together, and building Bi community and Bi culture. The whole thing just really made me feel very lucky to be bisexual. Also, that I realized I was bisexual, and then that I came out as bisexual, and all the things that have happened after I came out. Because if all of those things had not happened, I would not have met this wonderful group. I would not have had that experience at Amsterdam Pride. I would not have been part of this international Bi Plus community that is so warm and accepting and loving. The theme of the boat was more love for everyone. It was written in Dutch on the side. I think that's a pretty good motto for Bi people. It was very special because I didn't really get to do New York City Pride this year. I came back to New York for Pride and then got COVID, unfortunately. So I had to miss most of Pride in New York. I did get some Pride in LA this year. I marched in the WeHo Pride Parade with Ambi, another awesome Bi community organization out in Los Angeles. That was so fun. It was so amazing to walk in that parade and see the Bi flags waving back at us, get excited when our group passed by. It's always so much fun to see that and experience that Bi visibility because people are really hungry for it because it hasn't existed for so long. If you are not part of a local Bi community, I highly encourage you to find one if you can, if it's safe to, if you're out. There are also some great online Bi communities. I am on the leadership committee of Bi Request. As always, anyone who listens to this podcast is welcome to come to any online Bi Request meeting. Ambi also does some online stuff. There's other good online groups. Bi community is so important. I can't stress that enough, and I hope everyone gets some. We have an awesome season coming up for you here on Two Bi Guys. I've already recorded a bunch of interviews for our season premiere and second episode. We have RJ Aguiar. He is a content creator and much more you'll hear when we actually get into the interview. We'll also hear later from Stephen Quadrer, who created an app called Hetero. I recommend you download that and check it out before that interview drops. Also, Dominic Arnall, who is possibly the only Bi man who runs an LGBT plus charity in the UK. So we're going to talk all about the charity space and why the Bi community typically is underfunded and has fewer resources and how that plays out and what we can do about it. We also are going to hear from Dr. Mimi Huang. I'm so excited for that interview. It was so much fun. I've been wanting Dr. Mimi to be on the podcast for a while now, and we finally made it happen. I also marched with her in the WeHo Pride Parade and got to meet her in person finally. So stay tuned for that interview. It's going to be great. Plus a lot more in the second half of the season. Lots of good stuff coming up. And now a brief message from our podcasting platform and sponsor, Zencastr, and then we'll get on with the show. Enjoy. Starting a podcast can seem daunting and challenging, but it doesn't have to be. Zencastr's all-in-one web solution makes the process quick and painless the way it should be. I have now been using Zencastr to produce this podcast for 3 seasons. This is the 3rd. I researched a bunch of them, and this is the one I chose before I even joined the Zencastr Creator Network. One of the big reasons is because it records everything locally, so you don't get any of that internet static. You're getting clean audio for each person. Zencastr can then combine the tracks together and do some noise reduction and other mixing, or it can give you separate tracks for each person depending on how much editing you want to do. Not only does Zencastr provide crystal clear sound, It also provides gorgeous HD video. If you've seen our Instagram page, you've seen the video that Zencastr produces. It looks great. And the whole thing is so easy to use, even for my guests who are not very tech savvy. There's nothing to download. You just click the link and we start recording. Zencastr is all about making your podcasting experience easy, and with everything from local recording to automatic post-production in the tool, you don't have to leave your browser to get the episode done. I want you to have the same easy experience as I do for all my podcasts and content needs. So if you go to zencastr.com/pricing and enter the promo code 2BYGUYS, you will get 30% off your first 3 months. Pretty good deal. That's zencastr.com/pricing, promo code 2BYGUYS, TWOBIGUYS. It's time to share your story with Zencastr. Okay.
The dick jokes will abound. Yeah.
I can't believe we missed all those slut jokes and I wasn't recording that. Okay.
Yeah, no, we'll just have to remember those the old-fashioned way.
Hello and welcome back to 2BYGUYS. I am Rob. I am here with a lovely writer, creator, performer out in Los Angeles who I've met since I've moved out here. I am joined by RJ Aguiar. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
It's Aguiar, but like
Aguiar.
Aguiar, yeah, like backyard, sort of.
Backyard. All right. RJ Aguiar is a writer, creator, performer, model, and advocate for the queer community. Best known for his work across social media. He is the creator and host of Quick Question from Brain Jolt Media, which you can find on TikTok and Snapchat. I have so much to say about you, just like, get ready.
I get around.
And it's like not even all of everything you've done. He first rose to notoriety with his YouTube channel, The Not Adam. He has since appeared on BuzzFeed, Blossom, What's Trending. His work has been featured on the Huffington Post, Upworthy, Daily Dot, The Advocate, and much more. As an activist, RJ has worked with the Trevor Project, the Human Rights Campaign, GLAAD, BiNet USA, Planned Parenthood, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Obama White House. He was also a founding committee member for the Resist March, the second largest LGBTQ plus march in history. And he is currently on the board of directors of the Los Angeles Bi Plus Task Force. Welcome, finally, to 2BYGUYS.
I was exhausted just listening to that.
Oh, and I trimmed it down a lot too.
Good God! Oh my God! What am I trying to prove to people? Ay.
Yeah, seriously, you've done a lot. Do you want to take a break or something?
Maybe I should. Honestly, given the current climate, you got to self-care. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Clearly,
this is true. Well, I doubt you'll take a rest.
Yeah, no, I have anxiety. Resting does not compute in my little brain.
Well, it's nice to finally have you here. I've been following your work for a while.
I have been circling this pod for just standing by the phone, just waiting. I mean, and geeking out over so many legends you've already had, and now you get me. So I apologize in advance.
And this is my LA season. I'm also having Dr. Mimi Huang on this season.
Yes.
So between you and her and probably some other people, we're moving to the West Coast this season.
Even to be mentioned in the same breath as Dr. Mimi, much less now on the same board, is such a can I curse? It's a mind fuck.
Yeah,
it's a complete mind fuck. Just because this is someone who taught me when I was first getting into this space. But I guess we can get into that.
Yeah, we will. And we'll talk about your advocacy work. And Mimi has been around for so long. I mean, it's really amazing the stuff she's done before a lot of us were doing anything.
Incredible, yeah.
Yeah. So before we get into that and all your social media stuff, let's start with you, RJ, the person. How do you identify? What pronouns do you use? Any spectrums you want to identify on? What labels do you like? Go for it.
I stick to bi guy. That's and guy. I know it tends to be a bit of a masculine identified. a term. Although I think people of all identities could have guy energy.
Mhm.
Pronouns he, him, his, or sir if you're nasty. And yeah, no, I mean, like, it's I like, even though I identify very much as a cis man, like I actually love that my forays into gender fuckery help sort of redefine what it means to be masculine identified. Like I love that I hopefully have the opportunity to help define like non-toxic masculinity and sort of what that looks like, and how it's free to play in other people's playgrounds and not feel like that threatens or invalidates my identity in any way.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it's kind of where I've fallen on it too. Like I
Yeah,
kind of have toyed with this idea of like how much does my maleness matter to me? I think I've come down where you are, which is like I feel like a cis man and I'm comfortable there, but I like pushing the boundaries of what that means and what
for
masculinity
sure.
is.
Yeah, no, it's great, and I think now, like, we're in a kind of overcorrective period where we still kind of see like masculinity as being something that's very oppressive and very, toxic in a lot of ways. But hopefully, as we sort of, advance the cause further and further, yeah, like there'll be more, more and more people, even straight identified men, can see this as an opportunity to really expand what it means to be a quote unquote man.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you, especially out here, in cities like LA, like you do meet some non-toxic straight men, and then you meet straight guys that don't flinch when you flirt with them. In fact, they'll flirt back, and I don't care for that shit at all.
Interesting. Okay, wait. I want to talk about that, but I think my doorbell is ringing because my AC is
Oh,
out and they didn't tell me they were coming, but hang on, can you hang on
no,
one
no, yeah,
second?
yeah, let's do it.
I have to take this time. Oh,
Ooh. Leave it all in.
Can you hear me? Oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't leave all of it in, but I did leave some of it because it was kind of funny and there was really no cutting around it in the end. Of course, after 2 days of not telling me when they were going to show up, the repairman showed up exactly when I was recording this interview. Oh well, you also missed RJ faking an orgasm to see if I could still hear him while I was talking to the repairman. Maybe I'll post that on social media, maybe not, we'll see. But eventually we did pick it back up somewhere around where we left off. Here it is. So, anyway, where were we? We were
Straight
talking about
guys
the
who
straight
flirt back,
guys.
but like whatever, we can definitely
We
move from
yeah,
that.
but yes, let's get back to you. Let's
Mm-hmm.
get back to your bi identity.
Sure.
When did you kind of realize that about yourself, or when did you first start noticing that
Oh my
aspect?
gosh, I don't know, because that's always such a weird question, because especially like the technical answer was like age 19 in college was the first time I was like, oh, that's me. It's not the first
Mm,
time I heard the word bi or noticed that I had same sex attraction, but it was the first time that like someone like had a conversation with me as like, oh no, this is a thing, and put to bed a lot of like the common misconceptions, and that was kind of that first moment where it was just like, oh, that's me. That is me. That's a thing I'm allowed to have. I mean, but noticed in elementary school I had crushes on girls and boys, in retrospect, but
mhm.
two things kind of really conspired to sort of have me try to keep that part of my identity suppressed. One was being raised in the church, the Catholic Church, which
Mhm.
you know I guess to their credit, I don't know, I didn't get a lot of the fire and brimstone. I got what I call soft homophobia, which is, oh, you can't necessarily help if you have gay thoughts. If you act on those gay thoughts, God is pissed off and you're going to hell.
Mm.
So if you're same sex attracted, that's just your cross to bear, and you're supposed to be celibate, and or you can choose which impulses to act on. And I'm like, I guess that's kind of right. And then the other being like growing up in the aftermath of childhood sexual assault and not really telling anybody, and thinking that my same-sex attraction was like something that was the result or like a sickness or a symptom of
Hmm.
something, of that experience that just, I tried to sort of get rid of. And so between those two things, like, yeah, like it was kind of rough, especially, in the teenage years, coming to terms with all of that. And then finally, and that was why it was so huge to meet someone who was just like, no, you're not broken. No, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, this is just how you are. Or this is, or not even you. She was just saying that, like, that was how she identified and told me about her experience. And then that was what clicked. I was like, oh, boom, me.
Yeah. That's so nice to have a friend like that who can kind of, be very straightforward with you and just talk about
Yeah,
it.
and I can't even remember the last time like, Maddie, if you're out there, I'm just like, we haven't really kept it, like, haven't seen her since college, but yeah, Maddie, if you're out there, thanks, thanks for changing my life.
Yeah, that is really nice because, like, I mean, I've had a couple friends who, since I've come out to them in my 30s, they have also come out to me as bi, like people I was friends with in
Oh
high
yeah.
school or younger. And, I don't blame any of them for not sharing this with me sooner, but I do kind of regret that, like, none of us felt comfortable enough to talk about it with each other, even though there were a whole bunch of bi people at my high school, at my summer
Oh,
camp, at
100%.
my
Yeah.
college.
And it speaks to the power of representation, like, and not just representation, but affirmative, healthy representation is, yeah, like, that's the second order effect is more and more people have the capacity to be like, oh, okay, this is a possibility, and therefore, like, I can accept this now for myself.
Right, exactly. So you're 19, you're in college, you realize
Mm-hmm.
this, and then what happens? Like, did floodgates open in terms of exploring it? And also, like, did you come out? When did you start coming out?
No, I mean, I
Two questions, two different
still.
questions.
Oh yeah, no. Well, I mean, it was definitely not something that I really explored until, like, because I was 19, like, about to turn 20, and then, like, 20 was where I kind of um started giving myself room to maybe explore a bit, and even then I was just like, um I don't see why this is relevant to anybody else. Like, why I have to sit here and change. Because in my mind, I was still gonna, like, end up with a woman, and so it was just like, oh well, then why would I, like, be open with people and then have them, like, question my eventual marriage because, like, oh. And then I started dating a dude, and that was we started dating at 20, and then by 21, and it was starting to get serious. I was like, oh shit, I should probably tell people, which kind of ended up being a slight misstep on my part, just because they sort of associated that epiphany with, like, what sort of made me bi or got or prompted it, and it's like, it wasn't such a direct, A to B sort of thing. But I mean, this was also, like, the first guy I ever really, like, did anything with was the first guy I dated. So it was just, it was a catalyst, but not for coming out, but not necessarily the realization or the exploration of it.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I also had realized it at a certain point, but still was mostly dating women, and I just kind of thought,
Mm-hmm.
why does anyone really need to know this? I probably want to marry a woman. This other part of me is like this little thing that isn't that important. But and I
Yeah.
didn't have that catalyst to, like, kind of push me out there. It took a few years.
I'd say the other part, though, was I didn't even tell people, like, I'm bi or I'm gay or anything. I just said, like, hi, I'm dating a dude, and that was it.
Right.
And sort of let them gather their own conclusion from there, which is what prompted the now famous video where, like, I kind of went on a rant, um basically because I'd had, there by that point, I was doing YouTube with my then partner, and had people just sort of constantly being like, you're gay, why don't you just say you're gay, why do you keep saying you're better? And then that was, I made that video that now, had ha- I haven't even checked what the view count on it, but it was the shot heard around the world.
What video? Tell us about it.
It was the bisexuality setting the record straight. I did air
Oh,
quotes for those of you listening. Yeah, and it was like that was and I had been doing I've been doing YouTube for years already at that point. So it wasn't even like I kind of just focused on like general LGBT, which in parentheses was basically just gay community like activism for a while.
Mhm.
And to me, I didn't really like see a difference or a point in singling myself out as bi, just because it didn't sort of seem relevant. And then it wasn't until I made that video with the intention of I'm going to talk about it once so I don't have to talk about it again. Oh, the irony. Oh, the irony. Um
Yes.
because then it's everywhere. It's on
Yeah.
HuffPo, it's on Upworthy, and there's this flood where everybody's like, "Okay, now do more stuff." And I'm like, and so, those, especially on YouTube, like on the Not Adam channel, what I loved about that channel and those videos was that it was very much documenting my own sort of discovery of bi specific community and activism, and how even someone who had, sort of privately identified as such for years, oh my god, like there was this like and that's where I first, started getting in touch with people from, BiNet and from the Bi Task Force, and having
Yeah.
people literally sit me down and giving me like slide presentations on, hey, like we have larger health disparities and mental health disparities than even gay people, and it was just such a huge, like, it was like a mind blown for like over the course of like almost an entire year, as I just kept learning more and more and more, and how like we've been erased from history, and we like there was just this treasure trove that I had just stumbled upon, kind of Forrest Gump. I always say I Forrest Gump my way through the beginning of this, because I was just right place, right time, boom, it just sort of converged around me. And yeah, the great thing about social media is I was able to share that process and have it benefit more than just me.
Yeah, that's actually like kind of what I wanted to ask you about, because you kind of were doing this stuff on YouTube a little bit before the bigger explosion of buy stuff on the internet
Yeah.
that's really happened in the last like 5 years, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
But you were doing it about 10 years ago, and a lot in that window where not there
Shh,
wasn't
don't tell.
much.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Sorry
it's
to.
weird. No, it's fine. No, it's wild. It's absolutely wild. Where even now, like recently, I went to VidCon again for the first time in quite some time, and I went to an LGBT creators meetup, thinking that like just like VidCons in the past, like I'd be the token B, and then all of a sudden most of the people there were like bi and pan identified, which I was just like, I was so choked up, because I was just like, oh my god, like
Yeah.
I mean, did I definitely didn't call it, but I'm like, I'm sure I at least helped bring this to fruition. And I mean, I do like
Yeah.
still to this day have people being like, I watched you when I was a teenager, and I'm like, thanks, I feel old, but also still thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, and it's also interesting because it's almost the opposite of what is happening with me in this podcast, which was like I came out, I wasn't doing social media like this. I wanted to find a podcast about bi men and couldn't, so I was like, okay, let's do that and fill that space. Whereas you were like already doing all this stuff, and the bi awareness kind of came in almost because of that, it sounds like. So I guess I'm curious, like, how do you see your bisexuality fitting into all this work you're doing? Like, is it sort of a core component of it, or are do you see yourself as like a content creator for all sorts of things, and the bi thing was like a period of time or a certain topic that isn't everything?
I mean, it's bisexuality is central to me, and so therefore it is central to the work that I do. But kind of like you sort of listed off at the beginning, like I don't believe in trying to sort of pigeonhole oneself to a singular cause. Like that's always been. I mean, I found the Audre Lorde quote about, we don't lead single issue lives, like so early on in college, and that was just such a that hit me at the right time at such an impressionable age, where yeah, like even before being sort of out and proud and bi, like the goal was to see like, yeah, how many different fronts can I try to fight on in terms of, making the world better? And then to have the this whole new community, available, and not only available to me, but then also in such need in terms of visibility, in terms of funding, and all of that. It was like I was primed and ready, but then I found, something that was, like, in many ways life changing, because it was, personally enriching. It was professionally enriching. It was, it was the first time I really found something that was really sort of unique to me, because I was also one half of like a 2-person brand. And this was one of the things that I could own as being sort of like distinctly mine. And start to sort of, forge an identity that was my own.
Cool.
And so, yeah, like it was, it's sort of both in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
Right. As is often the answer with bisexual
Right.
people. I often ask binary questions and I know that the answer will be somewhere in between.
Right.
Or,
Right. You also can't see how weird I'm sitting in this chair right now. Anyways.
It reminds me of something in one of your videos. I just binged a bunch of your videos yesterday and today, but
God.
about this, like, this binary of like night and day, and how that is sort of like a parallel to bisexuality and gay and straight. And it's like, people often look at it as like it's either nighttime or it's daytime, instead of bothering to learn like how to tell time and what time it is. And actually there's a lot of things that matter beyond just night and day. I thought that was kind of an interesting one I hadn't heard before.
That was the first one. That was the first. I believe that. Yeah, it was that first video, and yeah, like, and that was, well, and I loved that comparison in particular, because it's like, oh, if you stay in that frame of mind, you can't be on time to anything. Granted, queer people are never on time to anything, but that's a whole different discussion.
Yes, yeah, and you just look at things in these very big, broad categories, which eliminate the complexity of people's actual personality and experience.
Right. And I think that was luckily it was early on that I was able to sort of come to the personal epiphany, and then also share that, like, yeah, people who, anytime you're met with resistance, it's because this person values their small-minded, simplistic view of the world more than they value your well-being.
Right.
And that
or
was
actually learning about you.
Right. Right. And that's still, I mean, it reigns true across, all the different, fields where I've tried to do work. And yeah, like that was, luckily, I mean, that was one of the few epiphanies I was able to kind of have on my own.
Cool. Growing up, cereal was one of the best parts of being a kid for me. I loved cereal. I ate it all the time. I ate it at night as a snack. But I gave it up because I realized it was full of sugar and junk that you shouldn't really eat. I really haven't eaten much cereal since college, but healthy breakfast doesn't have to be boring. Now Magic Spoon has the amazing flavors you love, but without all the bad stuff. Magic Spoon sent me this variety pack to try, and you can also buy their variety pack. It has 4 flavors, including cocoa, fruity, like queer people. Sorry, that's not written. Okay, I'm supposed to read this verbatim. Cocoa, fruity, frosted, and peanut butter. This pack has 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and only 4 net grams of carbs. Plus, it's only 140 calories per serving. It's keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, and low-carb. I don't know how it's grain-free, but it is, because it seems like cereal. I tried it. It's very crunchy, but it also kind of melts in your mouth. It's really good. It was very addicting. I kind of couldn't stop. So if you're interested in Magic Spoon, you can go to magicspoon.com/2buyguys and grab a variety pack and try it today. Be sure to use the promo code 2buyguys at checkout to save $5 off your order. Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember, get your next delicious bowl of guilt-free cereal at magicspoon.com/2buyguys and use the code 2buyguys to get $5 off. And thank you, Magic Spoon, for sponsoring this episode of Two Bi Guys. Now back to the show. Has your bi identity and like what bisexuality means to you, has it changed over time from when you made that video or when you came out in college to now? Like, is it the
Oh yeah.
same or has it changed? Yeah.
Oh, definitely. It's definitely evolved as my understanding of gender has evolved. I mean, traditionally, even in the early aughts or early to mid aughts when I was making a lot of my stuff, like there's still people's view of gender was still pretty binary, even though we definitely recognized the trans people and it's funny because even in the early days where they're like bi people are transphobic, it's like most trans people I know still identify as like one or the other. So but yeah, like as my understanding of gender has deepened and evolved, like yeah, my understand my I the way I sit in that identity has you know evolved slightly, just because that I've had many a conversation with myself where I'm just like, am I pan or am I bi? And it was luckily, like I feel very, very comfortable being like, okay, yeah, I'm attracted to pretty much any gender, but the attraction doesn't always cut the same in every direction, so I'm comfortable saying I'm bi, even though still, like, yeah, like if you're hot, you're hot. That's it.
Agree.
And also, like, I appreciate the term bi as a legacy term. Like that's the other way that it's really evolved, is that this is the same identity that like Brenda Howard had and Stephen Donaldson had and Sylvia Rivera had. I am hopefully carrying, maybe not the same torch, but I'm on the same relay team as these incredible luminaries throughout history. And so yeah, making it a point to still use bi has just really I see it as equally a heritage term as well as a sexual identity.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I love being connected in some way to the history of the bi movement because I
Yeah.
do think it's sort of the tip of the spear of the LGBT rights movement. And like, even if it's the word itself is linguistically misinterpreted sometimes, I still think it's worth it to identify that way because of the really important history of it.
But also as an English major, like language evolves through usage. So
Well, yeah. Well, yeah,
like,
that too. I don't agree with the misinterpretations of it,
oh, true.
but
Yeah.
but it gets frustrating to constantly deal with that.
And luckily, like plenty of thinkers even well before us have already sort of parsed that that definition and just been like, okay,
Yeah.
here's your bi. Same gender, different genders. The
Yes.
attraction moves two ways. There's your bi. Boom.
Yep. When in doubt, always go back to Robin Oak's definition, which has been
I love
around
it. Yeah,
for
yeah.
decades.
Although then, yeah, and then people are like, well, then what's the difference between bi and pan? And then this is when I really nerd out. I'm like, well, it's like the relationship between rectangles and squares. All squares are technically rectangles, but because they fulfill certain extra criteria, we give them a special name.
I like that. That's a good one. Yeah, there you go.
But you have to be a bit of a math nerd to be able to really wrap your head around that one. Because half the time people are like, wait, they get hung up on the shape part. They're like, wait, what? I'm like, okay, wait, I can't make up for your teacher's failure. I'm sorry.
I love it. So getting back to your social media stuff and your
Sure.
content creation, I guess like similar question. I'm curious about the evolution of it. Like, how did you get started with it? You were part of a team, and then like
Yeah.
how did it evolve from there, and how did your bisexuality come in or out of it as you grew in popularity?
It started because I had started dating a YouTuber. I was in college for media production and for creative writing, and here was someone who introduced an entirely different form of media and a platform that was completely unlike anything that I was learning about or exploring. So it just started off as kind of a creative outlet, and then yeah, that two person brand just took off. And then yeah, like it really, just began as, a creative outlet, a place to just sort of mess around and explore. But then as it became a job, like, there was definitely I mean, you had to keep trying to find different ways to feed the beast. And then, the fact that I had this new cause to take up definitely helped a lot in terms of finding, because that's what you always gonna want to try to do when you're on social media, is just like find your niche, and cater to those people. So yeah, I mean, social media is always a dialogue. Social is the operative word. So it's always a collaborative process between you and your audience. And so yeah, the fact that there was such a positive response to it was just more of a sign that this was something that I had to keep digging at and keep exploring. And yeah, luckily, like, being a queer on the internet kind of automatically, like, the expectation is automatically that you're gonna to take some sort of political stance, just because, like, your very existence is political. And so just by existing out in public is, seen by many as an act of rebellion. And so from there, especially in the attention economy, it's like you there, the incentive is definitely not to sugarcoat it. It's to lean in and to dig your heels in, and to push it, and to push it, and to be more vocal, and to be more um passionate. And luckily, I mean, that
Hmm.
that was never a that was never a challenge either, finding the passion and the drive to keep it up, because I knew that this was more than the view counts. This was more than the money, because let's be honest,
Yeah.
if you want to make money on social media, find another field. Like, this is, as a
Yeah.
creator, like, this is not something to do. Like, it is far too much work for you to not have something else driving you. So yeah, there's got to be something else driving you. And then luckily, yeah, like, the fact that I was already getting messages from of how much that work meant to kids. It was just like, oh no, this is the, like, this is the why.
Right. Is it like hard to for you to put yourself out there and be so vulnerable and exposed, sometimes literally exposed, like, or is that something that's or is that something that's like always been comfortable for you? Or did you have
Not
to like push
anymore.
yourself?
Not anymore.
Yeah.
And I mean, the, there it's an art form, I will say, like, because there is definitely there is actual vulnerability, and then there's this sort of performance of vulnerability. And a lot of times, I do try to, have the two intersect as much as possible. That being said, like, there are trade-offs. There are definitely trade-offs. So, being vocal about, you know, um, being a sexual assault survivor, being an intimate partner violence survivor, like all of that was that was difficult, in a lot of ways. But luckily, every time I felt kind of freaked out, by that sort of vulnerability, like, the outpouring, the the subsequent outpouring has definitely, been so supportive that it's more than, in my mind, like, it's justified the short-term stress. That being said, like, sharing everything is also a trap.
Uh,
Especially when you are the brand, it's very easy for it to quite literally take over every facet in your life, because there is no boundary between your personal life and your professional life.
right.
And it will wreak havoc on your mental health, because as much as, first of all, again, being bi and a person of color, like, hey, already have, increased risk of all these mental health issues. Also, like, me being, it runs rampant in my family anyways. But even then, when you're trying to combat it, and you're trying to tell yourself, like, hey, my worth isn't defined by how I'm perceived by others, except kind of is when you're on social
Right.
media. And
Right.
there is such a thing as being too honest on social media. And there are, and you'll know pretty quickly when like you share something and people are just sort of like, oh, get back to the fun stuff. Like
Yeah.
people have enough problems of their own, so they don't necessarily have the space to sort of take on yours, especially if they can't relate to it.
Yeah.
So it's a perpetual tightrope walk, and I feel like now, because I've been doing it for damn near 15 years, like it's a tightrope that gets easier to walk. I also do feel like that there's a part of my brain that's just like mush, like the part that's restrained and maybe like, hey, maybe don't share personal stuff. That gland is burnt out, like that's
Hmm.
just gone. The social media has forever broken my brain in that regard.
Yeah.
But you know, I am what I am, and that's all that I am, and you can't like
Yeah.
like and in terms of the physical exposure, that's also like that's a direct response to like what gets traffic on social media. Like I to this day, like I will, people are like, why are you such a thirst trapper? And I'm like, look at the numbers. Like,
Right.
and so, but yeah, luckily I mean, with therapy and with a lot of like hard work on my mental health, like there are certain boundaries I will not cross. Like it's one of the reasons I'll never
Like,
do OnlyFans, just because like I don't think my mental health can handle marketing that very personal, intimate part of my life, especially as a sexual assault and a rape survivor. Like I don't like monetizing that part of my life regardless of the short-term benefits, I know will wreak havoc on my mental health, just like the daily vlogs eventually did. Like there, you do have to sort of
yeah.
put up boundaries based off of your own health.
Yeah. That does seem important to find those boundaries and find what they are for whoever, each person. Cause like it does seem that in our lives, there's all these different inputs and experiences we have. But on social media, like it always, no matter what form you're working in, it gets reduced to some number. And that's how people are
Mm-hmm.
reacting to it. All boils down to some number of how many watched, how many listened, how many
Exactly.
liked, how many commented. And like
Mm-hmm.
if what you're putting out there is so close to you and who you are and your mental health, I know from experience, less experience than you, but some, is
Yeah.
that like it's pretty hard not to associate that number with that thing about you. And so if you have some distance from it,
Yeah.
it gets a little bit easier to just be like, okay, people will respond how they'll respond. It's just a number. It doesn't mean something about who I am as a person.
Yeah, and thank God for me now working at like Brain Jolt and producing for other people, because I am able to create that distance
Right.
where I'm like, I still pour my, heart and soul into this show, but at the end of the day, like it exists as its own thing. And it's why like I make it a point to try not to care that much about my personal socials anymore. Especially just because then it also takes the joy out of it.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like joy and passion are what people connect with.
Hmm.
So that's another reason not to let the numbers really sort of drive you. Like
Yeah.
they're a great litmus test for the creative choices that you make, but you can't let it drive what you do, because then everything just becomes redundant, and it just becomes this black hole of inspiration that you're doing it not because you want to, but because you feel like other people want it.
Right. That, yes, that. And also because so much of that is actually controlled by an algorithm or randomness or,
That does
you know,
not care about you. Yeah.
right. Or like one random person that shared something as a fluke and that, it doesn't actually necessarily correlate to what is resonating the most with the people you're trying to talk to. So it can be
Hmm.
I just got on TikTok. I'll probably be off it soon because it is like, it's a lot of fucking work to think of this shit.
It is.
But I look at some people and it's like, some of their TikToks have millions of views, and I'm like, why? And then other ones have very few views, and I like them a lot more, and I connect with them. So it's
Yeah.
like there's so much randomness.
100%. And there's so many external factors behind that would fill their own pod in terms of like, not every view is created equal, not every follow is created equal, but that's a whole can of worms that is, I still to this day have meeting upon meeting that are, hour and a half long, breaking that kind of shit down.
So I saw online you've done a whole talk about this topic, but I'm curious to ask it for you here. How does social media shape how we see ourselves?
Yes. Oh my God, I love doing this talk. Especially at colleges. Although it's in need, it now with a new, like it needs to be sort of updated a little bit. But yeah,
it's changing quickly.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a constantly evolving space. But you think about like how we define ourselves we think of identity as kind of almost a light bulb. It's something that we illuminate and radiate out into the world. But if you look at the way that people define themselves, it's almost always based on criteria that shape how the world like interacts with you.
Mm-hmm.
And so like your identity is not created, it's curated. And so now it basically just it enables you to, more deliberately, like you have obviously more options at your disposal. So you can be a lot more deliberate in your sort of curation of your identity. But then again, it's also very performative.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is a brand now, or anybody with any sort of public facing online persona basically is a brand at this point. And, in that talk, we get into a lot of like the implications of that. The fact that right now this self-curation is like especially when it comes to young people, like they're defining their worth based off of these metrics and comparing themselves and their lives with what they see from others, which is also very sort of curated, polished, photoshopped, all that sort of stuff. And so and it is shaped according to the priorities and the sometimes even the whims of social platforms, where their goal is to make money. And there's of course the old adage of if you're not paying for the product, you are the product.
Mm-hmm.
So that the short answer is our social media has kind of now made everything an identity or a potential identity of sorts. Usually it was down to like the same 5 criteria where people would define themselves based on what, like gender, occupation, relationships. Shit, it's been a while, but it's like basically I do it at the beginning of the talk where it's like I have them fill in the blank. I am a blank.
Mm-hmm.
You can't say person, you can't say human. So what do you use to fill that blank? And you usually say like, okay, a gender word. I'm a man, I'm a woman, whatever. Do you say anything like race based on race and ethnicity? I am black, I am black, I am white, I am Hispanic, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Do you say an occupation? Do you say something about your sexuality? Do you say a relationship? I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm a child, I'm a brother, I'm a sister, whatever. And it's like within 5 criteria, like most of like, if not all of the crowd is kind of covered, even though you can more or less use anything to define yourself. So why is it that?
Mm-hmm.
And now more and more with social media, it's like, okay, no, I am a Beyonce stan. I am a, I'm a nose picker. I'm an unapologetic nose picker. I don't give a fuck about your judgment. I have sinus issues. I'm a harmonizer. I'm like, when I sing along with a song, I don't sing. I want to harmonize with the singer. Like there's so many different options now because all I have to do is, shoot it out into the world. And next thing I know, people from around the world could be like, oh my God, me too, me too, me too,
Mm-hmm.
me too, me too.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's like a good, helpful thing that like these weird, quirky things about you can now be actually the things that people most want to share?
Yes and no. So there's I mean, technology of course always innovates faster than our ability to really comprehend it and the implications of it. But yeah, I mean, like in so many ways this does help us find community. I know for me, like when I'm going to college in the middle of North Florida in Tallahassee, and there's not really that much of a robust queer community, like I go online and I shoot that out into the ether, and next thing I know, there's tens, hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of people that are just like, oh, me too, me too, me too.
Yeah.
So that's good. You can also do that with if you're a white supremacist or
Yeah.
or a neo-Nazi. So it cuts both ways.
Yeah. That that makes sense if it's promoting something positive. Do you think like in general that social media, this landscape is, I mean, this is a similar question, but just even more broadly, like, is social media helping the queer community? Where do you see that? And where do you see social media falling short or actually being problematic for queer people?
Oh, well, I mean, let's talk about how queer creators, especially sex positive queer creators, are over policed, demonetized, harassed, deplatformed
Mm-hmm.
at substantially higher rates,
Mm-hmm.
and how these platforms continue to gaslight us and be like, we're not biased. We
Mm-hmm.
have algorithms. And it's like that doesn't necessarily, or they can try to be tokenistic about like maybe one or two exceptions to the rule, but then it's like, no. I mean, yeah, like I've, especially ever since like platforms like Instagram have tried to like overcorrect with moderation, and now it's not just enough to violate the community guidelines to be deplatformed. Now, ever since, what was it, 2019, I want to say, they've been cracking down on quote unquote borderline content, which is another reason why you see a lot of queer creators being deplatformed, especially because
Why? What's
then
borderline?
borderline is basically like their version of like, it doesn't technically violate the community guidelines, but it's like on the board, like
Okay.
it deliberately toes the line. And I mean, there are like troll groups out there that will even like write bots to mass report people and try to get them deplatformed.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, it's not just a problem faced by queer people, but people across all sorts of marginalized identity are disproportionately affected by this. That being said, I do think the long-term arc of social media is a net positive for queer people, and especially queer communities that suffer from this visibility crisis. I don't consider it an accident that the first real generation to like grow up with social media is now like all the more open-minded when with regard to sexual and gender identity. We can, people can try to argue that as a net positive or a net negative, but like I don't consider it an accident, and I personally think it is a positive that it has been this huge tool that has completely transformed our understanding of sexuality and gender.
Yeah.
Like all things, though, like there's so many devils in the details. So
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah, it's like, I mean, because we live in this heteronormative society and queerness is very hidden, like it for so long was probably so much harder to find other people like you and to feel
mhm.
normal. And so the internet and social media certainly helps with that and has like great effects. But it is interesting what you're saying about like the platforms themselves. They're there to make money. They're not there to spread awareness. They're not there to serve the creators necessarily, only as the creators serve them making money. And so
Right.
the devil's in the details, right? Yeah, that makes sense.
Right, which hopefully as Web3 advances, and creators own their assets,
Mm-hmm.
then that can hopefully give more power back to creators and community.
Yeah.
Because, let's say that first buy video I made, was minted as an NFT. Like that is a piece of content that doesn't just have value to me. It has, value to, a bunch of other people. And
Yeah.
hopefully that sort of advancement allows, not just creators to be better at monetizing their work and getting compensated for their efforts, but more opportunities also for, I think, of like collective ownership of assets, and for communities to sort of come together and own projects from their inception. But that's, again, could be its own pod.
That's all for the first half of my interview with RJ Aguiar. Stay tuned for the next episode with the second half of our interview. You won't want to miss it. And thanks for listening to Two Bi Guys. Two Bi Guys is produced and edited by me, Rob Cohen, and it was created by me and Alex Boyd. Our logo art is by Kaitlin Weinman. Our music is by Ross Mincer. We are supported by the Gotham, and we are part of the Zencastr Creator Network. Use promo code 2BIGUYS to get 30% off your first 3 months of Zencastr. Thanks for listening to Two Bi Guys.